Welcome to Middle Fingers Up, the show where we hold our heads high and our middle fingers higher. I'm your host, Kieran McKay. Okay, everyone, today's episode is filled with excitement and gratitude as I have the incredible privilege of sitting down with none other than Jugpreet, or as many of you already know him as Juggy Bajwa. To call Juggy a musician would be an understatement. He has earned immense respect within the South Asian community for his exceptional talents. Listen to this. There's multilingual singing going on here. He's won numerous awards. He has a prominent presence in the Bollywood community, like getting shout outs from actors that I remember growing up with, Salman Khan, Shah Rukh Khan, Aishwarya Rai. Like, this is amazing to hear. And Juggy's musical journey has been nothing short of remarkable. He made his mark as a runner-up in Canadian Desi Idol. I know he's traveled to India as well. He's continued to showcase his exceptional talents in various competitions. And he's also released a few albums. And then recently, he's debuting with his duo, Tonal Vision. Just Juggy's creativity knows no bounds. And also, I guess there's more to Juggy than also meets the eye. Beyond his musical talents, he has an inspiring story to share, because if everything I've said hasn't already inspired you, this will leave you in awe. Despite being blind since infancy, he has defied many odds and pursued this passion in the arts with this unwavering determination that I just can't wait to learn about. So I just want to express, I don't even think I can express enough how grateful I am for Juggy's presence here today. I know he's a busy man, and the fact that he took the time to join us is truly humbling. So for all the listeners out there, I know you follow him. I follow some of you. I've seen you watching out for him. Get ready, because this one's going to be exciting. Without further ado, Juggy, welcome. Thank you for being here.
Hey, thank you so much for having me. Honestly, it's such a pleasure and such a wonderful introduction as well. It's great to be here with you.
Aw, I appreciate that. You know, like I mentioned, I know you're very busy. You have a lot on the go. You were so quick to message me. I think we started sort of chatting about over a month ago. And I was saying to you just before we started recording that I owe my dad a shout out, because he was visiting a month ago. We were having coffee together and he's like, you know what, Kieran, I've been thinking about this guy, Juggy. Your mom and I have been following him. I really think you should try and get him on. And at that time, we thought we were just shooting for the stars, and here we are today with you. So
You're too kind. You're too kind. I'm always available. As you can probably see, the room I'm in right now is pretty messy, but it's a very informal setting. So,
I love it. That's good.
You know what? Middle fingers up to those people.
Yeah.
That messy rooms aren't.
Yeah, there you go, right?
Life.
There you go. That's okay. I got a bunch of crap on the ground too, because I knew you're not going to be physically in the studio. So I'm with you too. There's shit all over my table, but that's how it is, right? When family and friends that you have nothing to hide show up and your shit's everywhere, they get you. They know you're more than just a messy room. So, right?
It's so true, especially when it comes to guys, right? With us, it's even that much more messier, right? We don't care. Like, there's just shirts everywhere. There's I
live with three of you. Like I always say, I am in a frat. I like to say I'm the queen of the throne, but I'm actually living in a frat house between my husband and my two boys. So I know exactly what you mean with shirts and socks. Do you leave socks everywhere too? Because those are always in the living room. There's always a trail. Yeah.
And then I always get annoyed when I have to vacuum, because I'm like, oh, why didn't I not pick this up before?
They get sucked up.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. Well, you kind of already started this. So you already said middle fingers up. So why don't we just jump into the middle fingers up segment? I would love to know what it is that you brought with you today to put your middle fingers up to, other than messy rooms. We've already covered that. Or was that the one?
honestly, I think that was a part of it. I would say middle fingers up to those who discriminate based
Mm.
on weight. You know,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I would. I get it. I think everyone has a certain preference and stuff like that, but I think looks aren't everything, and I think sometimes we pay too much attention to what someone might look like, and instead of what the person is behind those eyes and behind the exterior. Like they always say,
Mm-hmm.
don't ever judge a book by its cover, and so it goes both ways.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, it's something that I hear a lot, and I think when it comes down to it, I'm not saying that we shouldn't all, strive to be healthy, and we shouldn't all do that.
Mm-hmm.
But I always tell people, I'm like, I'm fluffy, I'm a teddy bear, like this is who I am.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you for sharing this because I sometimes do like body image series and interview people, all sorts of different conversations, because like body image is a big thing for me too. But I have not had the voice of a man yet because I find it really difficult to find men that want to come on and talk about these sorts of things that you're mentioning. And I know men feel it too, because we're all human. We all feel it,
Yeah.
it doesn't matter you're woman, man, or, how you identify. We all feel that way because that's the first thing we go to. First impressions, unfortunately, are built off of the first thing we see. And
Yeah.
so, you mentioned it even in earlier, like, hey, don't, my room, whatever, right? And I didn't even notice it until you brought it up. I appreciate that you're pointing that up because that's a hard one. Like, so for you being on social media, being in music, being on TV and all these sorts of things, like how have you sort of dealt with that? Has it been an issue for you?
In terms of
Like the
like
weight, body image, the physical attributes as you're mentioning?
you know what I would say, and this isn't like I'm a really positive
Yeah.
go get it kind of person, so in general, I don't think those things affect me too much.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously, when you hear about those things and sort of the industry that you're in, where image sells,
Yeah.
a lot of ways, and I see that too. But I think it's also how you portray yourself with the image that you have. If we look at people like Gabriel Iglesias, for example, I'm not fat, I'm just fluffy. That's one of his go-to lines, and I think that's really stuck with him, and that made him really, really popular.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's so many layers to a person, and there's so many ways that you can portray yourself that looks beyond those things. And like that being said, like of course I work out, I like to walk, I'm a huge swimmer, and the summer's kind of being sort of on and off because there's been a bunch of weddings.
Oh
Right?
man,
You know how,
man,
you know
you're
how
on the
Indian
wedding
weddings are.
tour as well. Hey, Indian
Yeah,
weddings.
one of my best friends' wedding is coming up too, right?
Yeah,
So you know how
I
it's
hear
gonna
you.
be. So yeah,
You gotta eat the
but
chaat, man. Gotta eat the tandoori chicken, the fish pakora.
yeah, but at the end of the day, I think I would say sometimes you do feel it. Of course, you
Yeah.
feel it sometimes, right? I mean, I think we all do, right? We always look in the mirror, before we leave the house sometimes. Or for me, I just always like to always feel my hair, anytime I
Is that
comb,
what
right?
that is for you? Looking in the mirrors, feeling the hair?
Feeling the
Yeah.
hair, feeling like sort of how your shirt's fitting, and
Mm-hmm.
like, checking out the collar, double checking, right? To make sure
Yeah.
everything's good to go, right?
Yeah.
Because that is a visual thing for me. So those are visual cues for me, because I have to substitute for the vision loss that I do have.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I think that there's a lot that really goes into it. But I think for me, it's just, I think the way that it's really helped me get through all of those things and be positive is the social support I have. I think that's one of the number one things that we all need as humans. And I think the other thing is too is being active and exercising and working out, and the rest is just taking care of yourself
Yeah.
and taking care of just staying healthy as much as you can. I think
Totally.
other than whatever's meant to happen after that, you can't ever fight against nature. I'm a spiritualist that way, right?
Well, yeah, man. I mean,
Yeah.
you and I were joking earlier about our age difference, and I'm in my 40s, and I hear from people that are ahead of me too. Like as we get older, it's harder to maintain maybe in the way that we would have when we were younger. And I think we talk about weight loss or gain as simple as it just happens either way, but we never talk about all the things in between: hormone, medications, health. Like
Yep.
there's so many other things that defy all of that. Can you gain it? Can you lose it? And I think people that are in that place, they struggle because they automatically, everyone gets categorized as, well, you're lazy, right? Lose the weight. And movement and eating less isn't being healthy. But yet that's, as you said, society has a. So I appreciate someone like you who's really well known in social media. I think you are a major influence to many young people out there. And I think that your talk is an important talk. And I hope you keep doing that, because that's why we're here today, is like this story of how someone that defies these odds and gets to where you are. Like you said, there's a social aspect. So I imagine there's a wonderful village behind you supporting you to get there. So I want to get into all of it. So I love your middle fingers up. I'm gonna throw mine out the door because it was stupid, and I'm gonna join you because I think yours was a really good one, and I want to put my middle fingers up to that too. So thank you for that.
No, and I just want to say I really appreciate you saying that. I'm still growing as an artist. I'm still there's so much that I really want to do. And I think just having these talks and being authentic, it's something that I never really used to talk about, because, when you go into interviews, you're always just like, oh yeah, we're positive and we're roses and rainbows and we're living the life, but it's as artists, especially in the industry that you're in, that's so demanding on these things, it's really important to talk about, because as artists who really want to get into this, these are things that we have to consider.
Yeah.
And how we brand ourselves and how we market ourselves and how we do all of those things are some of the things that I'm just starting to figure out.
Oh, that's that. You are ahead of me, so I can't wait to learn some tips and such from you. So, okay, well, can we start with, because I know where it's going to get uncovered in all sorts of maybe a messy way. So I'm going to try to be organized today. That's my goal today. And so I want to start, and you can decide where your story starts, but I would like to know the story that led to your passion to pursue a career in music. So, on your Instagram, you quote, "seeing the world through music," which just like melts my heart. I tell everybody, I got Juggy coming on and this is what he says. So I want to know, where does that come from? What does that mean from you? What's your story? Let's start there. It's a lot of questions.
Honestly,
in one.
I really give credit to my dad on that one. He's the one who came up with it. And also shout out to Uncle G, your dad as well. I mean, I really appreciate his love and support, and Auntie G's love and support, and all of you guys. Yeah. So seeing the world through music, really, I think music has been a part of me since I was a kid, and I think a part of that really evolves around the fact that when I was growing up and being a blind person and being, I was put in a regular school, and, we'll obviously talk about the blindness aspect of things as well. But on a sort of short summary of it, I was bullied a lot. I was told, my parents were sort of told by other people, like, what is he going to do, in his life? What are sort of like, how is he going to really handle himself? And there was a lot of that. My parents never backed down. They're like, no, there's something. Even I'm so lucky as a blind person to have that. Not many people do, where they have all the social support and where they have all of those things to be able to succeed and to encourage you to self-advocate and to encourage me as a person to, and I'm not saying I didn't face those hardships, but I think music really became a fabric of who I am, because my mom, she's always had a passion for singing. My dad's always had a passion for writing. Like a lot of the songs that I've released up to this point, my dad has been the main lyricist in those songs. And then my brother, he played a lot of dole. He's a doctor. But he was on a Bhangra team called Dunia All Stars. So they they won a lot of competitions throughout US, throughout North America, and so and then my sister is being into dancing. So we've all had this willingness to be a part of music in some way, and I think that really came from our parents and the music that they listened to, and my mom, anytime she'd be cleaning, she would have the music on, and I'd be sitting and sleeping by
Oh,
the stereo. And so for me, I think that was just so, music was so therapeutic for me, and I just knew that it was going to be a part of me. And I think people saw it from such an early age, and they're like, you need to get your son into to training. They told my dad that, and my mom. And so they initially, when I started going to classes, I was like, I hate going to music class. This is why am I learning all these classical things? And I just never really understood. And I was like, maybe it's not my thing, right? But then when I really started to enjoy it and to really embrace it, I just knew, like, yeah, man, like this is something for me long term. And
how old were
so I
you when
think
you
that's
realized that? Sorry to cut you off, but how old were you at that age?
so I started performing when I was 5 or 6.
Oh, wow.
But to be honest,
Yeah.
I didn't really start taking it seriously until I was in high school.
Oh,
That's when I really felt like, okay, I should really try my hardest at this, because I knew that if I just sat down with somebody and learned things, that I could learn them pretty fast. By God's grace, that's a God gift in a lot of ways. And so, yeah, and so I think it just really came down to that. And I think just through all the things that people used to say, what are you going to do, and how is this going to work for you, and all of those things, that was sort of my thing, is that, hey, it's not about proving other people wrong, it's just about proving myself right.
yeah.
And proving the amount of hours that my family, my dad, my mom, my sister, my brother, all the hours that they put in, going to performances, being there to encourage, being there while I'm practicing to tell
Yeah.
me, all these different things, and having the amount of teachers, amount of gurus throughout my life that have instilled that confidence in me, being on Saregamapa, being on all of those things, it really gave me such a different perspective on who I was, as a person. And so, yeah, I think music really, really became a fabric because of those things, and it really added to a lot of what I'm doing now.
Thank you for sharing that. That's incredible. And I'd like to give your family a shout out too. I can tell how connected you are to your siblings and your parents, and good for them to, especially, being South Asian family, being a minority, being out there in Delta, and you're raising a young boy that's blind, and you have all these people around you that are probably worried, but doing it in a way, right, that's not really helpful. And good for your parents to say, F that. we're gonna figure that out in a different way. And they saw something through you, right? In a way that other people would have obviously had a misconception or judge, because we're blinded by these things, right? Not to use the word, but that's what we are when we see it. When we see a hurdle, we think, well, fuck it, you can't do that. Let's invest in other things. So I would imagine that you are super grateful for that support that you have around you.
Oh, I mean, immensely, because, well, like I briefly mentioned before, it's not something that everyone has the opportunity to have. And I think a lot of that really comes down to, again, what people say, and
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people really put a lot of stock into that, unfortunately. and
yeah,
and so, because I see a lot of blind people, and a lot of people who I respect within the blind community,
yeah,
and there's so much potential there for all of us to succeed.
totally.
It's just the environments we grow up in,
Yeah,
what we're told, and it's beaten down within us. So,
yeah,
even if we feel like we can try and do something with that, we we give up more easily than other
yeah,
people in that sense, because we don't have that feeling of support in that sense, or we were never really given that from childhood. And then
yeah,
sometimes people realize later, we should have been we should have been involving our kids in more activities outside of just other blind activities,
Yeah.
but just getting them out and helping them be around other people, because ultimately, we're going to interact with other people,
Yeah.
and that's the thing. And so at that point, it's too late, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, and I'm not saying people don't have the power to change, because we're all adults.
Mhm.
When we reach a certain age, we're all, in terms of who we are as people who are blind or differently abled, as I like to say, because we all have certain things that are within us that are unique, and the way we do things
Totally.
are unique, because we substitute for different things, whether it's vision loss, whether it's a loss of an arm, or anything like that. And so I think when it really comes down to that, I do think that it really starts from our loved ones, and it
Mhm.
it starts pushing people right away, especially when they're kids, to get them into different activities, to have them excel. And this goes for people in general too, spending time with your kids, right?
Yeah.
Because then when you're able to spend time with your kids, and I understand, especially in this economy, and in this climate, especially when we immigrate from other countries,
Mhm.
it's we're working jobs, and we're trying to provide for our families. But I think it's also really important to sit down with your kids and ask them about how their day was, and
Mhm.
sort of get tabs on what's going on, and talk to them about how they're feeling at school, and all of those, because I think that really shapes the foundation. It's good, like I said, it's good to work jobs, but I think it really shapes the foundation for your kids growing up, to
Mhm.
know that they have someone that they can talk to,
Yeah.
because so it's just about getting that balance,
Yeah. Yeah.
between jobs and kids.
Really, really well said. I think that's a really strong message. And I hope you continue to put that out there as you figure out your own branding and what kind of artist you are. Like, you speak so well. And I think our community, you made so many important points, like our community and many other communities that, as you said, are children of immigrant parents, immigrants that come in. There's a lot of challenges. And I think many of us that are children of immigrant parents grow up feeling like there was abuse, there's neglect, there's these sorts of things. And there's a lot more education out there for some of the younger generations. And what I appreciate you're saying is our kids really need the influences in their life, which are the people in their household, to
Yeah.
teach them to think for themselves and figure out what do they love. I think that message is so, so important. So I hope you continue sending that to others, because like you talked about bullying a few minutes ago. And when you look back now, what is there something that maybe you would go back and tell little Juggy that was being bullied that you wish someone had told him, or parents can tell their kids that are experiencing that?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I think what I would really tell myself back then is that it's okay to be who you are.
Hmm.
And I think I didn't realize that at the time, because and so I'll give you some perspective, right?
Yeah.
So when I first got into elementary school, I definitely had some temperament problems at the time, because as a blind person, you don't realize the difference between night and day,
Mm.
because all you see is pitch black all the time. And for me, I can't even see anything. So
Mm.
I don't even have a concept of what black is. I don't even have a concept of any of those things.
Ah.
And so, yeah. And so there was a doctor at the time who came in to sort of, I guess they usually do that, where they come in to analyze certain people and certain kids. And he basically told my vision teacher, who basically is like a mother to me as well, he said to her, I don't think this kid's really going to amount to anything. He seems like he can't really comprehend, and he's temperamental. What he didn't understand is there was a reason. My sleeping patterns were super off,
Mm.
because I didn't, like I said, I didn't really know the difference between night and day,
Yeah.
especially back then. And obviously I do now,
Yeah.
right? But
Fair. Yeah.
as a child, like,
Yeah.
you don't know. And especially when you can't see. And so
Yeah.
she said to him, like, no, you need to come in, and you need to sort of see how he does things. So anyways, he comes in, and he didn't even know that I knew he was there, and no one told me that he was coming in. So I just kind of recognized by the sense of smell or something like that, right? Like sort of the cologne that someone is wearing or something like that.
Right.
And so, anyways, he came down and he sat down, and I was just reading a braille passage to my vision teacher, and he was gobsmacked. He was like, like, wow. I mean, I never thought, that he could do something like that. And then when I turned to him and I said, because he was silent this whole time,
Yeah.
I turned to him and I said, "Hey, doctor, it was great seeing you. I'm just off to class now." And he turns to my vision teacher and he goes, "How did he know I was here?" And basically she said the same thing that I said, a sense of, the other senses that I have and can sort of tell, right? Sometimes by hearing certain things, and whatnot. And um, so basically he erased everything that he wrote in
Hmm.
terms of his analysis. And then, when I was sat down by my vision teacher and they said, "Hey, like you're not different than any kids, but you need to realize that all the other kids can see and you can't, and you're holding a cane." And so I think I started to realize why a lot of people would treat me differently, and I was bullied to the point where I had to actually change elementary schools.
Wow.
Yeah, I went to the another elementary school, which was with my best friend at the time, so it really helped alleviate a lot of things. But
Mm.
even with that, I was always sort of to myself. I never really had the chance, or I mean, I had so many chances. I mean, people would try to involve me in things. I just would always push away, and I just felt like maybe I'm just so different, and I always just doubted myself. And as a child, it was really hard to go through at times until I got to high school. And this is a story I really love to tell, right? My parents and my counselor basically, they had a meeting, and I walked in and I was just like, people are avoiding me. Like, why are people avoiding me like this? And my counselor turns to me and he goes, "They might be avoiding you, but have you ever considered that you might be avoiding them?" And
Mm.
that really made me think a whole lot, just by that. And he said, "You shouldn't feel sorry for yourself. You're not different." And those, at the time it was like, what are you talking about,
Yeah.
right? But
Yeah.
when I got out, I realized, like, when I started talking to other people, and when they, at first they were like, "Well, how can we explain this to you?" Because, like different video games or different, just normal conversations that you would have with high school peers.
Right.
And so when I started to do that more, and it wasn't an overnight thing, but I think over time people really began to understand that, yeah, like there's so much more there. And
It sounds like you started recognizing that in yourself too.
yeah, exactly. And I think, yeah, exactly. It's a team thing, right? It's about, in order, and this is what I tell people, right? In order for people to understand you, you've got to be able to understand them and understand where they're coming from,
Yeah.
and not use it against them.
Yeah.
Because oftentimes, and I used to be like this, where I'd get angry, like, "Oh, why is this person saying this, or why is this person saying that?" But they're just not informed. And honestly, how can they be when they've lived with sight for most of their lives, for
Mhm.
the, or for all of their lives.
Yeah.
And so that's basically something that I really learned, and something that I was like, okay, if I really put in the work here, I think other people are willing to do that. And I started to see that over time. And then people, when I got into university, that was like one of the heights of me, as a social person. And I got to learn a lot. And I was sheltered at times. I was protected, a little bit, and I had to have conversations, even with my own family, about
Yeah.
me getting out there more, and doing things on my own. And I started having those conversations when I was 12 years old. Like,
Mhm.
"Hey, I'm not going to be driving cars, so I need to get used to traveling by buses and trains, and all of that." And my when I explained it to my dad in that sense, he was like, "You're right."
Oh,
And it's certain things like that. It's leaps of faith almost, and it's scary. I'm not saying that it wasn't ever scary for me. And there's certain things now that, I'm catching up on, that are a bit scary, but that doesn't mean that we can't ever dive and find our way.
mhm. That's incredible. Just to go back and think about those words that counselor put together in that sentence for you. It sounds like though that was sort of a turning point for you, would you say? Is that where where doors started to open for you in a bit of a different way and how you viewed life and your role in the world?
Yeah, so yeah, basically, I mean, that was definitely a turning point for me when my counselor mentioned that. Yeah, I had to have conversations, and say basically, look, and throughout, even as I got older, my parents and my brother and sister, there are certain things just wanting to explore and wanting to travel more and all of those things, and that came with time, obviously.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest things about me is I love to explore, I love to travel to new places, and yeah, just having that conversation with my dad about doing all of those things and traveling and exploring, that was a huge thing. And again, these are leaps of faith at times. The other thing too is that I always tell people, regardless of if you're disabled or not or whatever, our internal net worth, we're all priceless in a lot of ways. And a lot of people would look at that and say, well, what do you mean? And so basically what I mean by that is that we have so much within us potential wise, and we have so much that are souls and that humans that we have because we're all attached to nature. But the question is, does society allow us to explore it? Do our families allow us to explore it? Because again, sometimes we're worried about our finances and this job will get you more money and this job will make you more things. But I always say we all have a purpose in life. Whether it's gardening, you're serving the purpose of nature. Whether you're a person at retail, helping people come and pay for groceries, you're helping other people put food on the tables for their families and also helping yourself put food on the table for your family. And so I always say, like, we all have a purpose, and it's so unique, it's so beautiful.
Yeah, I think that's so well said. And I think the messages that you're putting out today here are going to resonate on so many levels for folks because I get messages from people about feeling alone, feeling isolated, feeling like it's very difficult to get anyone to understand the circumstance that they're in. And to hear you talk in the way you do, I think sheds a lot of light and a lot of hope that there is a way to find the will or the possibility. And some of it is in our village. Hopefully we have someone good on our side to support us. But a lot of what I hear you talking about is internal. It's that self-awareness. It's building our own identity, our self-worth. And I think it's a really important message because, as you would know, in the time you grew up in the time my kids are growing up in, self-worth comes from the external things. I did really good in that video game. My friends all invite me to birthday parties. Somebody complimented how good I look. All those sorts of things is how we start to gain that self-worth. And I really like your message, which is, hey, we got to start with ourselves. We got to find that within, right? So
Yeah, and how many times, like, do we meet people in our lives that we say, oh my God, you're super talented at this, or you're super talented at painting, or you might be, oh, like that person can sing, if they just practiced more, if they found, sort of the right, and if they had that support. And
yeah.
sometimes I think it's just about compromising. Sometimes it's because I had to get a degree too. Right.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's just like, what makes your child tick? What is something that they're super attracted to work wise or sports wise or music? Is it music? Is it sports? Is it
Yeah.
anything like that? Like, what makes them tick? And hey, maybe they just love it. That's embodied within them.
Mm.
And so I think a part of it is people telling you that you're good at it, but it's also, like you said, it's the self-awareness and just figuring out, okay, if I just, it's one thing to sing, for example, but it's like, then you have to put in the hours, right?
Yeah.
To make your voice polished. It's now that you've gotten the God gift, it's about finding the right teachers and finding those kind of things.
Mm.
And it's similar with sports or anything like that. If they're willing to put in the work for that, and if they're willing to do all of those things, then why not let them try?
Yeah.
You don't know. You don't know sometimes,
Yeah.
where that can take your kid, or
Totally.
other some other person in your family.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. So just before we move into music, I was going to ask you, I'm an advocate of mental health. Sounds like you really are too. So, as advocates of mental health and empowerment, because a lot of what you're saying is empowering, what advice would you give to others who may be struggling to overcome their own obstacles and find their path to healing and even self-expression?
Oh, yeah, no, that's definitely a really good question. I think just, speaking from my experience and stuff, because I've been through a lot of mental health as well. I mean, we all go through it in a lot of
Yes.
ways, more than sometimes we think we don't, but we do, right? And so basically what I would say is just communicate, talk about how you're feeling. Sometimes even just talking about how you're feeling with someone who's close to you or to other people around you will give you perspective, and if you feel like there's certain things, and mental health, especially, in our community, is very taboo, and it's just
Yes.
only starting to be realized, and still it's taking a while. I think there's a lot of people who've dealt with a lot of traumatic things and incidents and all those things that they feel like they're not able to revisit. But sometimes just even going in for counseling and really talking about those things, it sucks to go through, and it's not easy to talk about.
Yeah.
And I get that. And it's, like I said, it's like you're almost you're diving off the diving board, and you don't know how it's going to make you feel. But once you get through that process, you'll start to see that there is there's that weight that is lifted off of your shoulders. But it's just about, going in for counseling doesn't mean you're just going in for counseling and you're just sitting there and you're not really answering the questions that the person might be asking you, right? Because I know some people will do that, right? They'll just say, oh yeah, I went in for counseling. Well, did you give them enough information to work with? Right? Because it's one thing to go in for counseling, but it's enough to actually be open or feel like you
Totally.
can be
Yeah.
open. And sometimes we feel like, well, what if we're too open, or what? I mean, we should never worry about that when we go in for services like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes we feel like, oh, our thoughts are dumb or they're stupid, or like it's nothing about that at all. So I think that's one of the biggest things. In order to find our voice and in order to find our expression, it's okay to feel how we feel, as long as then, after that, we can take those actions, knowing what we know and knowing how we
Yeah.
feel. Now we can take those actions to be like, okay, well, so how do I because no one wants to feel any sort of negative emotion or anything like that. I don't think anyone wishes that upon one another like that. And so I think that's what it really comes down to. And I think
Totally.
the lack of communication that I personally have experienced from people, in a lot of different situations, I think that's one of the biggest things. I listen to a lot of Jay Shetty, and that's something
Oh,
that he
yeah.
talks about is the lack of communication that really gets us in trouble in our relationships.
Totally. It always comes down to communication. And sometimes we think through assuming something that, someone meant it a certain way or they meant to hurt us or they were rude. I know I'll leave a conversation and think, oh my gosh, that person, treated me this way or whatnot. And then it takes a minute to think about those misconceptions that where did that come from? What is that? And it only takes a minute to go back and re-clarify with someone, right? Like, is that how we
Yeah,
left this? I wanted to make sure we left in a good place, or did I say something to offend you? And often we don't circle back to those things, and we let it be, and then it gets worse and worse, and it stews, and then bad habits
it
form.
festers, and then you
Totally.
explode, which is
Yeah.
worse than going back and saying, hey, maybe I didn't appreciate this, or maybe I didn't appreciate that.
Yeah, it's just
And
it's such a pivotal part of every conversation is communication. So, and I would imagine like for you, okay, we communicate through all of our senses and you're compromised with your sight. And so how do you make up with your other senses? Like where would you say is your best form of communication?
so I honestly think that, and again, this is, I think there's visual cues that are probably attached to this as a sighted person as well. And I can't really speak to that because I can't see. But what I can say is that I think the biggest pillars for communication are being a good listener,
Yeah.
and being able to ask, hey, instead, sometimes we assume, right? Like, oh, this is what somebody said, sometimes it's just asking, hey, is this what you meant? Because this is how it came across.
Yeah.
And when we do that, I think those are the biggest pillars of communication is being a good listener and letting the person speak their mind, and then having your boundaries and being okay, since you spoke, here's sort of where I am, and now I'm gonna speak my mind and talk about how I'm feeling, and just both parties being receptive to that. I think those are the biggest pillars. I think are being able to communicate and being articulate yourself and not being afraid, because sometimes in certain moments it's okay to sometimes not use words that might not explain properly the situation, but I think then it's up to the other person to be receptive and say, hey, is this what you meant?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we get to that point where we're just assuming that, oh, this is what the person said, and it's like, well, no, maybe that's not what they were trying to say, right? And not everyone's a good articulate speaker
mind
all the
reader.
time. Yeah.
That's fair. I appreciate that. I'm going to roll into some music questions if that's okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
sure.
so, we're talking about voice, we're talking about representation in some ways. And so representation matters, and it's essential for all individuals from all walks of life to see themselves reflected in various fields, especially in the arts and entertainment. And I know that's not growing up here in Canada. Child of immigrant parents, I always say I have a white girl complex because there just wasn't the kind of representation that I realize now in my 40s that I really could have used as a young person. So I'm going backwards and making up for those things. And so you are in the arts industry. So how do you envision the music industry evolving to become more inclusive and supportive of artists from diverse backgrounds? What do you think is evolving, if anything at all?
I think you know what, that's such a great question. I think social media has really, really helped the evolution of what artists are now as comparative to even let's say even 5-10 years ago.
Right.
I think social media is so huge now, and I think when you see artists like EP.37 and Diljit Dosanjh, all those people, making a mark not only in the Punjabi community but also internationally. Or in the Indian community, like all over India, all over the world. You start to see all of these things, and I think that's what really has evolved that background, that diverse background. You see now, you're starting to see Diljit Bajwa working with DJs like Diplo. You're starting to see.
Apparently, he was having lunch with Taylor Swift, I read. So I don't know what that means, but maybe there's something coming soon between the two. I know, right? Like I heard AP on the Virgin radio station here in Calgary. Right? And you're like in between a Britney song and a whatever song, and you're like, oh my gosh, this is one of our people from where we are from on the radio. And so it's such a big deal. It's so weird to say, but it's such a big deal when you're seeing that now.
It really is. It really is. It really is. And I think props to all the artists that are doing it. I think it should motivate a lot of us who are working at our craft as well, that it can be done. And I think that's the beauty of music, is that it really defines humanity, regardless of what culture you come from, regardless of religion, or regardless of all those things. Music bonds us all together,
right?
And it really can. And so, and I think now, especially that sort of side has really been realized within the diaspora of music and our universe and the world around us.
Yeah. That's very well said. You speak so well.
That's what they say. But
well, you see, I'm not the only one. So, yeah.
No, you know what? I appreciate that. I think it's just something that I've really tried to be more articulate over time. I always feel like I've got so much to say.
I love it. You did say your early childhood, you were quieter, and so maybe this is you just sort of bringing that part of you out that you thought you had to shield, and you didn't have a voice. So you're just catching up. So that's good that you have a lot to say. I appreciate that. So, as we were talking about artists and diverse backgrounds, you've had quite a presence in the South Asian community. So let's talk about that a little bit before we get into tonal vision. And I know your partner's not here, so I'm sure, you don't want to speak on their behalf.
We should definitely bring her on too at some point.
Oh my gosh.
She's got a great story as well.
Okay.
Sure.
I love this.
Yeah.
I love that you are already booking yourself for a second one before me having to beg you. This is excellent. This makes me feel great.
Even just having her on would be great. I think it'd be awesome. She's got a great story, and I think definitely. I think awesome. it'd be awesome.
We will. So before we talk a little bit, I will ask you a little bit about tonal vision. But before that, just going back to sort of representation. So how did your musical journey, like I know you talk about childhood, music was a fabric to many things that you've talked about. Your parents had a huge influence with music. So, okay, great. You love music. I love music too. I sing in the shower. How did you decide after going to music school, having mentors and all that, what made you decide that you wanted to venture off and let the world hear you outside of music class?
I always feel that it was sort of a goal from the beginning when I got into, when I started to take it more seriously when I was 12 or 13, I just kind of knew, like I would always look up to different artists and I would be like, hey, I want to get to this point where I can share my music with the world, and not because of fame. I honestly, it's not because of that. I think it's more, the message, and I've always got a lot to say, and sort of I try to be, really intuitive about the people that I meet around me. I don't explicitly obviously say it, but I do tend to listen to people and their tones and try and read them and sort of spiritually just connect with them in that way. And we all go through something, and I think just my message has always been like, hey, we're missing that togetherness. We're divided more than ever in this world right now. And so for me, I think it's always just been like, and I've seen this for so many years, and I just didn't really know what it was until obviously you get older. But for me, it's just really about just getting close to, just being able to share that with the world. Yeah. I think that's what really, really started to drive me, because there was a lot of people who would say, you should, do this, it's going to make you famous and it's going to do all of that. But for me, it's not even about that. It's just about really just getting out there.
Yeah. Well, man, you did. So give us the highlights reel. You have, like I said, you have an extensive resume. You've been part of competitions. You've made your mark in Bollywood. You've released albums. So let's talk a little bit about, before we get into your venture over to tonal vision, we're still talking about, so you even sing in different languages. So give us a highlights reel for those that don't know all of this about you.
It's funny because I don't really even talk about this with people that I meet, right? I'm always just like, yeah, I'm a musician,
So I'm asking all the, you're like, darn it.
No, it's, I don't know. It's just always been like that.
Why not? Is it why don't you talk about it? What is it about that?
I don't know. I've always felt, I do talk about it in bits and pieces, right? I don't just, my professional life is as a musician. This is sort of the overview of what I've done.
Yeah.
But I don't make a habit of delving into it too much especially when I meet people for the first time, because I don't want it to I don't want this to completely be about me. How are you? What are you up to?
Yeah. But that's because you don't have a problem with your ego. That's exactly what it is. Well, because that's always ego that walks in the room before the person. But in your case, you don't have that issue, man. You're so good at that. So humble.
Well, I appreciate that. I just think that we're all equal here. And I think as a musician, we can't have ego, especially because we're doing art. This is an art form. We all, different, we all paint things differently.
Yeah.
And music is a part of that. So I obviously, my first stage performance was when I was 6 years old. That's when I actually started training. My first guru was Ustad Davinder Hundalji, who's also blind. Oh. And so I started learning from him. yeah, so my first stage performance was in Squamish, actually. My buaji actually organized this Canada Day, and so she had called me out, and she wanted sort of the people there to hear me sing. And so I was so nervous when I
Oh
got
yeah,
on
man, you're
stage. I
six
still
years
remember
old.
that day. I was just like, I'm 6 years old, and so I started singing, and everyone was like, "What?" Like, like I think people were genuinely, they were shocked, and I was like, "Really? Yeah, you guys are shocked? Like I didn't even know I could sing, like." I mean, I appreciate the response. I mean, it was so overwhelming. I was so surprised. That's when I started to get more shows, and by God's grace, like I've done over 1,500 stage shows now,
Holy
all over.
sh!
Yeah, so like throughout North America, throughout the world, India and stuff. And then, fast forwarding to, I was awarded the Queen Elizabeth II Diamond Jubilee Medal. I was one of the youngest recipients to receive that from the Governor General of Canada
That was in
when I was
2012?
2013. Yeah,
2013.
yeah,
Okay, yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And then I was also awarded the Community Leadership for Courage as well. Going into high school and stuff, in the top three for the BC Junior Talent Search at the time.
Mhm.
I also won Red FM Idol, so the local one, and then the international, or pardon me, the national one as well.
In Toronto?
And in Calgary, actually, they did
Oh.
it. Yeah, they did it a few years ago, and so yeah, I was a winner of that as well. And then when I got into Capilano University, I did my Western classical music diploma there. And that's part of the reason why I sing in 16 different languages. I've just been so honored to have all that experience, and obviously in India as well. I've had, depending on where I do my shows, I try to learn different songs like in Bengali and Tamil and stuff like that as
Oh my
well. So
gosh, those are not easy
yes,
languages.
no, they're not. They're definitely not.
So what's your favorite language to sing in?
Honestly, outside of Hindi, Punjabi, and English, I'm a huge fan of Bengali music. I think
Wow.
it's and Tamil too. I think Tamil is it's very technical, actually. The way they sing in Tamil and stuff, it's very technical stuff, but which I also appreciate. I'm very a lot of people, a lot of musicians would tell me, like, bro, you're too generous to music, right? And I'm just like, no, I just love it.
You're too
And
generous.
so
Aw.
yeah, but I really love Bengali music. I think it's just the melodies. I'm a melodic sort of lover. I love all these beautiful melodies and stuff. So
Mm.
I think Bengali is like one of those things that I really started to get into. But yeah, so when I finished my Western classical music
Mhm.
diploma, I also did my Indian classical music degree
Mm.
from Prachin Kala Kendra, which is in Chandigarh,
Oh, nice.
and,
Shout
and,
out.
and stuff. Yeah. Shout out to them,
Yeah.
and Punjab as well. So they do it all over India. They've got quite a few places, and so I did my degree from there. But a lot of the technical sort of things, I obviously learned from all my gurus. Like there's so many that I'm so thankful to all of them.
Mm.
Right now I'm actually learning from Ustad Mabul Khan Saab, who's based out of Mumbai.
Mm.
And yeah, so I'm learning a lot of light stuff and classical stuff from him. There's so many different people, because obviously over the years there would be people from India that would come down for a couple months, and then they would be here in Canada, and then they would go back. So
Mhm.
I'd learn from them as well. And then I also started learning R&B and English songs and pop from my vocal coach, Jan Cooper, who is really well known within the industry as well,
Oh, nice.
who's based out of here in Vancouver. And so I definitely owe a lot to all of those people, because after I graduated and I did my degree and my diploma, I went to India, and at that point I didn't even know that I was going to do Saregama. I actually went to India because one of my uncles was going through a really rough time. Unfortunately, he passed away, but he had some really bad health complications.
Mhm.
And we really wanted to see him as well. And while we were there, I was like, it'd be great to explore my career and my my uncle really wanted me to do it too. He that was one of his wishes, was for me to explore my career options while I was out there and in Mumbai. And so I was actually so Anup Jalota ji, who's a huge icon within our industry and in the Indian music industry. He does a lot of bhajans and stuff. So I was sitting at his place, and I was just singing a song for him, and it was crazy because at that time there was a movie director that came out of the elevator that actually goes into Anup Guruji's room, basically into his home. And so so he came out and he heard me sing, and then he was like, "Hey, I want you to sing for my movie," and so it just sort of happened.
Dude, like I have like mega goosebumps right now. Like,
oh, thank you. Yeah, and so it just sort of happened, and I remember just going back and sitting with the movie director, and he gave me the song, and it was for a movie with Ashutosh Ranaji, and it was called Chicken Curry Law, which is basically a satirical movie on Indian law. And so so that was my first break within Bollywood. And then Saregama, like I was still exploring my options there, right? Saregama actually happened before Chicken Curry Law was released. And so because it takes some time, right, through all the production and post production and stuff like that. So anyway, Saregama was coming on, and my dad was reading it, and we were just like, "Hey, it doesn't hurt to audition." And for backstory, Saregama was always at the back of my mind, and I remember going there many years earlier, and at that point, I wasn't ready. I knew I needed more practice, and so when I went back in 2016, to India, 2015, and then Saregama was in 2016. I was like, I really want to see where I'm at, even musically, and see where I stand. It was crazy. It was a crazy audition process because you're auditioning with 150,000 other people, literally, from all over the world. And basically, how they had it is you had 34 judges, so 30 jury members. So basically, all from all over the industry and all over the world. So they would be marking you on your lyrics, that the way you say your lyrics, the way you pronunciate things, and the way you enunciate your diction, your tone, your accuracy, and so there were so many people plus the main judges that would be making most of the comments. And so I mean this was a really difficult audition process and competition because the stakes were so high. And I'm like, this is really going to tell me where I'm at. And so
like this competition, just for people listening that wouldn't know, it would be equivalent to like an American Idol, right?
Yes. Like, yes, absolutely.
This is like a massive opportunity to be part of.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I just want to point that out.
And so when I there was, even before you got to the TV round where you did your main audition, because there were so many people auditioning, they had to obviously, because the judges aren't going to listen to 150,000 people all together, right? Like, I mean, that's just crazy, right? Like, you're not, you're not going to get through that. So they do a bunch of auditions with the main sort of music head there first.
Yeah.
And so you have to get through like 6 levels of those before you make it to the TV round. And so when I was at the TV round, I was like, and I was just like, wow. I mean, I never, I was already so glad to be there.
Yeah, and like, so you got through 6 rounds, and every time were you like, oh, okay? Like, were you like, what was your sort of like demeanor like? Were you like, holy crap as well, or?
Honestly, I was just trying to live in the moment.
That's great. What was that like?
Honestly, it was pretty, and people always laugh at me because I'm very even keel. They're like, hey, you met Shah Rukh Khan sir yesterday. I'm like, I know, it was amazing. And they're like, if I was you, I'd be super excited about it. Well, I am super excited. I love all those people, but
dude, when I met Shah Rukh Khan at the age of 14, I hugged him, and I still haven't let go of that hug. So people that are saying what they're saying, they're, you know what I mean? That's how most of us are. When you look at a celebrity, they are a celebrity. You're just like, yeah, I met them. whatever.
Well, it wasn't even like that. It wasn't
Yeah.
even like whatever. They're humans.
Yeah.
They're like us. And so
Oh, good for you to
I
think that way because you're right. You're
I I
absolutely right.
I just enjoy, and obviously there's a different aura about them and all of those things, and I have tremendous respect for them.
Yeah.
Like because they've done so much. To me, it's just I take so much from them, and I learn so much from them, and to me, it's just like, yeah, I mean, it was such a pleasure, and I'm just so even keel about it with
Mm.
everybody that I meet. I'm always like that. Um, it was great. It was such an honor. So anyways, just going back to the audition, right?
Yeah, so
So
now
when I
you made
got
it
to
through the
this,
sixth one now, right?
yeah, and so
Okay.
this is the main TV round. So this is where the world basically will see you, right? And and so
Just,
I'm on
again,
this.
nothing big, just the world might see you.
That was nerve wracking, right? Because
Yeah.
there's going to be like millions of people because it broadcasts in over 165 different countries,
Yeah.
and and so I'm on
Shit.
stage, and here I am singing, and when it was done, just to get the standing ovation from everyone
Oh my
there,
gosh.
I just never thought that was going to happen. And the amount of love and support I got throughout that whole thing, and the way they even, I give them so much props because they never portrayed my blindness in a negative way.
Mm.
They really portrayed it in a very positive way. They showed a lot of me, at the gym, or
Yeah.
different things like that, and so I really love that, and I embraced all of that. And so, anyways, when we got into the main rounds for Saregama, I was, by God's grace, I was performer of the day. I think 75% of the time, they would they would give me performer of the day, and I'm like, wow. I mean, we all did so well. I mean, I'm
Oh,
so floored by this, like, because the other contestants who are, I keep in touch with most of them. They're all my, we all became friends. And actually, that was one of the seasons, and this was remarked to us by the director after. He said, the camaraderie that you guys all had for each other, we've never had that. Everyone's always like, oh, I got to one up this person, I got to do
right. Yeah.
that,
Everyone's a
I got to
competition.
like, but we were so happy for one another, and to the point where, when one of my other buddies got performer of the day, I was just like, thank God, right? Like,
Well, because you're talking
you
about
know
a lot of pressure, right? I would imagine.
well, it's the pressure, but it's like, you just feel happy. You just feel happy, because we were all there for one another. And I think, it's kind of funny because it's, you're in this competition, you're supposed to be fierce, and you're supposed to be, I gotta do better than this person. But one of the things I always tell people, right, is that when it comes to music, the only person that, I mean, of course, you're competing in terms of the industry, and you're
Yeah.
you're trying to get there, and you're competing against other artists, sure. But I think the more important part of the competition aspect of things is the internal competition you have with yourself.
Mm,
And so that's, how am I going to compete with myself? How am I going to make this next song better than my last one?
right.
And what is it that, because ultimately you're going to have your own audience, and you're going to gain your own following, but that really depends on the stuff that you release, and how often you release, and there's
Mm-hmm.
there's so many things that go into it. So yeah, for me, it was, when I was in that competition, I never thought about, oh, I got to outdo this person, I got to outdo that person, because we all have unique abilities within our singing. And so it's like, what is the best that I can do, and how can I do even better? And
Yeah.
so that was always in my mind. And so, to make it to the grand finale, to make it to the top three of a competition like that, and being a non-resident Indian and representing Canada in a lot of ways, like,
Mm-hmm.
and to receive so much love from the homeland, from India, from all over the world. I mean, it was extremely, extremely amazing in that sense.
Yeah, I would imagine. Like, what do we all have these memories and these highlights that we kept close to our heart and just there to pull out and maybe remember to help us on a crappy day. Would you say that experience is like one of your I know you have a long ways to go in terms of
Yeah.
your a young man, but would you say that that was one of your like top highlights? Like just would you say that that
Yeah.
experience sort of helped shape a lot of the musician you are becoming?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think being on a prestigious, because Saregama has been around for many, many years,
Yeah.
right? So we're talking since the mid 90s.
Right.
And it's become one of the most prestigious stages within music, I would say, because of all the people that have gone from there and become successful artists. Now reality shows are different because it's not just all about the music. It's really become all about and it's not all about your
Personal
talent anymore.
branding,
It's
right?
personal
Yeah.
branding and how can we make people emotional, and
Yeah.
I mean that's a different story, right?
Yeah.
But I think that in terms of, for me, I think as a musician, because I've always looked at it from a musician's point of view, it really gave me that encouragement that this is the beginning, and just to get a lot of love from people on this show,
Yeah.
it showed me how much more I want to do, and sort of what I wanted to focus on in terms of my singing. And B, it really just gave me that confidence to be like, yeah, there's so much more there, and I know there's so much more there, and this was the beginning to it all. And so I'm just glad to have taken that in stride and really find my way through it.
Totally. And I don't know, maybe I would add a C to that. And the C for me was like, this story is amazing, but the thing that keeps coming back to me is you went back and did it again. So many of us have experience. We apply to college, we apply for a job, we reach out to someone on Tinder. I don't know, right? And we get. I mean, I don't. I'm married, but we get rejected, right? We get.
I'm like, do you?
Yeah. Happily married. But like we get the rejection letter in the mail, or we get told at an audition, "Thank you, but no, thank you." And for some of us, that's kind of where that journey ends. We're like, well, I guess that's not for me. You decided to take the first experience as a learning experience and went back to, like, I believe you when you say that internal competition, because I would imagine you went back and you thought, okay, what are the things I'm focused now? What are the things that I can work on and build on? And then you went back and you friggin' practically won the whole thing. Like,
No.
that's incredible.
Oh, thank you. I mean, that's a part of life, right? And that's why I talk about that, because I wasn't successful the first time, and I think a lot of it was I didn't really know. I didn't really know what I was up against.
Yeah.
And you don't really know what you're up against until you actually try. And then, yeah, sometimes, like you said, we try the first time and we don't think that we have it in us. But the truth is, it's like we do. It's like, sometimes we just have to think about, okay, what is something that I can add, and what is it that these other people had that maybe I can add to my repertoire? Because again, when we are competing for those competitions, when I say you're competing with yourselves, a huge part of it is that, but there is an element of competition where you gotta stand out too, right? And that's sort of the part of things that we just have to understand when it comes to these things. And so my buaji's always said this line. She said, "Never let success get to your head, and never let failure get to your heart." And so I've always stayed by that.
She's a very wise woman. Shout out to your buaji. I love that. She's right. That's very nice guidance. I want to also ask you, because we were talking about your highlights. So any other highlights in your music, your career thus far that you want to highlight before we jump into a little bit about tonal vision? Because you kind of switch gears with that. So I want to talk about that.
Yeah. So, for me, I think one of the biggest highlights was being a delegate for Canada and actually representing Canada in Mumbai when they launched Air Canada from Mumbai to Toronto.
Oh, cool.
For the first time. So I got to do the anthems, the Indian anthem and the Canadian anthem there. And then I've started doing a lot of Canucks games, so national anthems at Canucks games, and just to see the response from everyone. I mean, it's just been unreal. And even the feedback I've gotten, I mean, it's great. I think it helps me as a singer, and I think that's what really, just to segue a little bit, doing English stuff like that on a very big platform and to be recognized internationally, and to be interviewed on places like CBC, and to have national hockey writers like Elliot Friedman retweeting your your
Oh my
anthems
gosh.
and stuff like that. Like, it was so surreal to me. And so I just, after going through that, that's what really gave me the confidence to get into tonal vision, basically.
Yeah, okay. So before, just really quick, I also want to celebrate the Canucks work you're doing. I think
Thank you.
that's like a super highlight. It's so exciting, and to be well received in that way, I think good for you. I hope they keep inviting you back. Like that whole Diwali special that they did was just from Calgary. I felt the love for our community, so I would imagine all the South Asians out there probably felt it times 10. That organization's doing wonderful things from a diversity place. So I hope you stick with them and go back. I know
Absolutely.
DJ here is doing a great job too. So
Yeah.
you two need to
He's
like,
doing great.
yeah, you two need a little duo or something.
We've talked about it. We've definitely talked about it.
You
But
guys should.
I'm glad that he's doing super well. He's getting a lot of gigs, even within the hockey communities. And not a lot of people talk about it, but he is really breaking a lot of barriers,
Totally.
to really introduce, Indian Night and be a part of Indian Night in places like Dallas, for the Dallas
Yeah.
Stars.
He just did
and doing
that.
stuff like that.
Yeah,
he just did that. So
well, he's the one that reached out and started that whole Diwali thing, right? So I think you're right. Kudos to him. Okay, so tonal vision. So you've done a lot of singing. You've talked about singing in different languages. Primarily, though, English hasn't been your primary singing language. So something's sort of switched gears for you, and now you are part of this duo, and you just released your single recently. Yeah. So let's talk about tonal vision. Tell me about this. How'd you decide to venture over to this? I know you had a lot of fans that wanted this too, right?
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of people who kept asking me, like, when are you doing some English stuff? We hear you doing anthems. We've not seen you doing like English stuff.
Yeah, man.
And I was just like, well, I don't know, right? But I started to really think about it more, and I've sang English within my friend groups, and like they would post it on their stories, or they would do stuff like that. And I have done a couple of English covers here and there, and that's actually how the Canucks discovered me, was through covers and was through a lot of other things.
Oh, cool.
On Instagram, and that's like my first ever Canucks anthem performance was actually during the COVID shortened season in 2021. Oh. And it was in April, and so they had invited me for Visakhi night because they had also seen my covers on Instagram, and they had so it was amazing. Like I never thought I'd be doing a lot of these and I'd be getting the response I'm getting. I mean, that's just the love of people. Yeah. Honestly, I honestly, like, I always listen to my anthems and I'm just like, okay, I need to do this better. I need to do that better. I'm always listening to them constantly and practicing.
Are you your worst critic?
Yes.
Yeah, because I did have a question. What's the best critical advice you've received? So I don't know if that's from someone else or yourself.
Well, I think my family's a huge part of that too.
Yeah.
They're really good at that. I think as musicians and stuff too, even when you read things online, there's probably some truth in some things that people say that you're like, okay, now that I go back and listen to this, maybe this is, like I actually agree with this and maybe I could do better at this next time. And so and that's the beauty of art, right? And we can't take those things personally. And so just getting back to tonal vision though. Yeah. So I met my friend who's like a sister to me. Really, we met when we were both going through some tragedies in our lives at the time. And so I think we just connected that way because we went through some personal things. And so we met through a mutual friend, and we just vibed right off the hop. And we became really, really good friends. And we would listen to a lot of music. Like when I say a lot, like I would usually be at her place every single weekend. And now obviously it's kind of 3-4 times a week. I'm sure she's probably annoyed at this point. Like we see each other quite a bit. She really got me into a lot of these things where I didn't realize that I could do that. And actually, the first time she heard me sing, I was singing in English, and I think I was singing like a Stevie Wonder song. It was like my staple back then. Isn't she lovely? Isn't she wonderful? And then so then he was like, yo, and we started vibing to so much music, and we had the same vision. And she was a producer already, so so she goes by Justine on Green, but she was basically behind the scenes before. So she would ghost write and ghost produce. So basically what that means is that you're not on the credits, because she didn't really want people to know at that point. And so she would get it to a lot of different artists, and get it to a lot of different pitch to a lot of top 40 artists, and she's received quite a bit of radio play as well.
Oh wow.
But she was like, you know what, we were just sitting there and we're like, what are we doing? Like, we've been listening to so much music, we've been jamming out. Like, she'd play a beat and I would just start singing on it, and we'd be like, yo, this is sick, and then we just never come back to it.
Right.
And so fast forward like 4 years later, to her I was like, hey, I'm thinking about this, like, why don't we start a group called Tonal Vision? And like, I think that would really suit us really well. And it's sort of like, let's think about it. And anyways, she was in Seattle at the time. I think she was off to do some music stuff, and she called me and she was like, hey, so I've been thinking about this tonal vision and all of that. I think something really clicked, because we come from different backgrounds, but we love the same sort of music and we love the same sort of thing. Like, yes, we should definitely do this. And so we were both actually going to Vegas anyway. So we ended up meeting up there, and we just jammed and we started writing together. And then it was just like, man, I think we should do something with this. And so we've been working on this for a year, basically. And I'm just so lucky to have known her, because I think the way that she has helped me get my voice out there more, in terms of how to project my voice within English stuff and how to do all of those things, I think that's really given me a lot of different perspective on me as an artist. And that, like, I've always had that thing within me where I've wanted to sing English. I just never really had the chance to do it.
Right.
Because I was always so immersed in the Indian stuff, which I'm still going to be doing. So basically we started our Tonal Vision project from there, and we're two totally blind artists. And so I think that just really added to it all. And so basically our thing is like, we want to bring everyone together regardless of what background you come from, and we share that same vision, of loving one another, of loving all the people around us, and bringing everyone together from different cultures. And so, and I've learned a lot from her, in terms of even just being more independent, being more of myself, and really embracing myself. I think just from the things that she's gone through, I think I learned so much from her, and that's why we've had such a brother-sister type of relationship, because I know that we've learned so much from one another. But I do think that she has been such a huge part of my life in that way, that I never thought that it would ever be that. And so I think that's why we work so well together. I think just releasing our single that we just did, called Kiss Your Lips, just to see the response, that tonal vision that we're getting, it's so surreal. We never thought. We've got basically 90K views on YouTube.
I was looking at your reel the other day, and from when you just dropped it, because the singles has it been 2 weeks now, or has it been 1 week?
It's almost coming up on 2 weeks.
2 weeks, yeah. So that's crazy that your numbers have gone up that quick. So, because that was my next question, is how are you being received? So it sounds like people are loving it.
Yeah, and this is just the beginning for us.
Yes.
Because a lot of the stuff that people are hearing right now is us just starting, but we've actually been working on so much more music since then. Yeah. Because, Kiss Your Lips, we've been working on that for a year. But we've got so much more music coming out. So goal is to kind of show people that we're evolving as this thing goes along here, and just to already get that response that we are getting. I mean, that's a huge boost for us. Boost in terms of not just our confidence or what we're doing, but also just all the things that we aspire to.
Yeah. Again, so well said. Everything you say, I'm like, yes. Like, please continue, because there are so many people out there that have these dreams, have these passions, and somewhere along the line lose their light because, as you've said in the beginning, people have bad influence on us. All sorts of things happen and people lose their light. And I think your story and Tonal Vision's story is, again, one that can maybe help people find that light again and recognize, like, the passion is there to be found if it's lost. And so, well done.
Thank you.
Also, like, I'm just going to say one of the things on my bucket list is to be in a music video. So my husband's probably going to edit this out because he's going to be so annoyed with this. But like, if you guys are doing a music video, I am super joining you. I will find my own way down. I will take care of my own wardrobe and hair and makeup. And
Let's do it. Let's do it.
like don't you just love that when it's like Entourage, one of my favorite shows. Just, like you have the talent in the front and like 30,000 people just, in the background in terms of the friends and the family just trying to latch on. So now you got one more latching on.
No, it's great. Well, you know what though? Here's what people don't consider, right? When people become famous, right? Everyone sort of looks at the glamour.
100%. The fame, right?
Oh, yeah. It's like, oh my God, that person's making millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Or that person's making a lot of money. But what we often forget is that there's so much that you have to, you don't get any privacy at all because you're being constantly followed around.
Yeah.
Neither does your family.
Right.
It's not an easy task.
Yeah.
Money is one thing, but money doesn't buy you happiness. It maybe adds to it a little bit, but
Right.
I think even then, like you're constantly, when it comes to people who can roam around freely, people who are at that level, they can't do that. And you got to be careful about everything you say, every move you make, anything that could be portrayed in the wrongest way possible.
It's a lot of pressure because you're also like trying to represent, as you said, your branding, you're figuring out what your mission is and who you're speaking for on behalf of, and all those, that's where that I would find that pressure, like too, of how do you not disappoint? Because there's going to be a time when you are going to disappoint all the people that love and follow you in the same way that some of them have disappointed you over time, right? But it's I would imagine it's a lot of pressure because no different than when Bieber and Britney and all these people disappointed us with their hurdles, right? When you're out there.
So with a person like Bieber, and this is something that I think we lose track of, right? So Bieber was a child from a very, very poor family that started earning millions of dollars when he was 13. And when you're earning millions and millions of dollars when you're 13 and you're, surrounded by mostly adults, and you're surrounded by like different crowds and you're surrounded by all of those things. If Bieber was just a normal teen at 16, 17 years old, just racing down a road, no one's going to care about that.
Totally. Typical
right? It's just going to be like, oh, it's just one of those typical teens.
Yeah.
But if it's Bieber, right, it's just like, oh man, like, this guy. And I'm not saying that we all don't make dumb mistakes or that we regrettable ones. I'm sure we all do. But again, and that's why I'm so lucky that I wasn't involved as a child actor or a child singer, that kind of thing, because I just think that education was so important.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. But for a person like Justin Bieber, who's super talented, when you're at 13 and when you're making millions of dollars, of course, there's going to be
oh gosh,
a lot of things and you're surrounded by so many different people telling you different things telling you how to live your life, or you should do this, because when you're a child singer, you're not surrounded by children.
Yeah,
you're constantly forced to do things that like you're an adult world.
Yeah.
And that's why I also argue that there should never be any reality shows for kids.
Right.
Singing reality shows. I think that's a really bad idea.
Yeah. That's a lot of, you're right. Cause you talked about the pressure and in terms of like the training. And again, we tune in once a week and watch this idol show with contestants like yourself. And we, critique, oh, she didn't sound great. Oh, he sounds better. But we have no idea what the fuck you guys have been doing all week in the background, right? To prepare for it. And it, so it's like
give you perspective.
Yeah.
To give you perspective. So when we would go in for our reality show shoots for episodes, we would shoot 2 episodes a day. And so a lot of what people would see is like the edited version, right? Like the 1 hour sort of.
Right.
But our shoots would last for literally 20 to 24 hours.
Jeez. Yeah.
And you're shooting 2 episodes. So sometimes there'd be times where I would sing at 4 a.m. the next day when I would come in 7 a.m. before.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
So so sometimes yeah, we'd be there since 7 in the morning, and then the next episode would be shot later towards the night because again, there's a lot of different technicalities. Camera's got to be facing this way.
Right.
MC's got to redo this, or your singing isn't redone. So anytime you get on stage, it's one take, one shot.
Gosh.
But everything else,
yeah.
right, in terms of what the MC does or what anyone else does. And by the way, Aditya and Ryan Baji is one of the best in the business.
Aww.
And so he's so great at what he does. But again, there's a lot to memorize and there's a lot of things, and obviously people need their breaks, right?
Well, yeah, man. Like when do you go to the bathroom?
Yeah, exactly, right? I think what it really comes down to is for adults, you can still sort of handle that, but for kids in that position, regardless of whatever reality show it is, I just think, and this is what a lot of us don't realize, but 20 hours for a 7-year-old kid is not optimal.
No.
It's
yeah,
not,
yeah.
To put it in a very, very nice way. It's not ideal, and it's certainly not a place where they should be, and especially in this sort of climate.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Often those are sticky situations because sometimes you have really, really determined parents or family members that are really encouraging the talent of the kid, and so I imagine it can get messy with what the kid thinks they want to do versus what the family wants to see them, aspire to be.
Well, it's a lot of pressure.
And, yeah, no doubt. I mean, I think, I think that's fair. So, okay. So I was also going to ask you your journey, as I've mentioned here, and you and I have been talking about, is an inspiration to many. So what do you hope your legacy will be when you look into the future? Like, how do you want to be remembered as an artist, as an advocate for diversity, for mental health, all these things? How do you want to be remembered?
Honestly, I don't want to be, the thing is I want to be an advocate, but I also don't want to have that as like, this is what I'm doing, or I want to be a role model, that kind of thing. Like I don't, I'm very sort of behind the scenes on that kind of stuff. Like I just like to spread my message in that sense, but not sort of like, oh, I intentionally want to do this kind of thing. If that makes any sense.
Yeah, those are the best role models, the ones that just don't even realize what kind of influence they have, which is
it's for me, the way I see myself being remembered, or the legacy I want to leave, is honestly, I just want to put out good music, and I want people to at least remember the music that myself or Tonal Vision or anything like that we do. And so I think for me, that's the sort of, when I hear about artists like the lead singer of Linkin Park, and when he passed away, that's the sort of legacy that, as artists, we all want to leave in some capacity. So, or even Sidhu Moosewala, one of the biggest Punjabi icons, I would say, within our industry, who has transcended what our industry was into where it's now at in terms of how it's so internationally recognized. And I think he was a huge part of that. I just think I want to be able to add to the music. I want to be able to add to the beautiful world that we have, and that's basically my goal.
Yeah, well, you're doing it, man.
Honestly,
you really are, and
thank you so much.
For sure. So, as a society, how do you think we can better support and uplift visual minorities, especially those that are pursuing a career such as yours in the arts? I'm asking really, like, how do we help ensure the voices are heard and the stories are celebrated? So how do you think we can, as a society, better support and uplift these visual minorities that like yourself want to get out there?
I think that we're on the right track, to be honest. I think in terms of uplifting visual minorities and stuff like that, I think where the world is currently at, based on where it was before, I think it's slowly but surely happening. I think it's just about, honestly, I think it's just about listening to one another and listening as humans rather than looking at the color of someone's skin. Because when we do that, I'm actually like, there's a guy named Christian Picciolini. He's a he used to be a white supremacist, actually. And so I was listening to his speech about how he basically got away from that group. And one of the things that he talked about is the fact that he actually started hanging out with someone who was different, and not the same color of skin, and realized that, man, we've got more in common than we think we do. And so it was like, yeah, we're all striving to make a living. We're all striving to do the same things. And it really gives you a lot of perspective. So, I think just looking at each other as humans, I think that's the next step that we have to take, because we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And we all have different cultures, but having different cultures and having different, maybe some different traditions doesn't mean that we can't be together and we can't assimilate and we can't do those things. And I think part of it is that there's a lot of media, there's a lot of social media, there's a lot of things that are dividing us right now.
Yeah.
And so I think instead of really listening to the things that we feel like suit our narrative, why don't we listen to the other person and listen to their perspective and listen to sort of how they feel? Because you know what? There's probably, I would say, like, there's probably going to be things that we all agree on and things that we don't, regardless of where we come from. And so it's just really about having that perspective. And I think social media, especially now, because we're texting and we're tweeting and we're doing all of that, that has been so lost that we actually haven't really been able to have any sort of like meaningful conversations anymore. And so I think we need to get back to that.
There's like stats out there that are saying that people in their early 20s are having the least sex than reported in history, because there's so much technology that's before them that's getting in the way of like, and I don't, and sex is like, I'm not talking about like people get out there and do it. I'm just meaning like that intimacy, that dating, going on a date, meeting each other, all those kinds of things that we used to have before technology. And now people are socializing less and less and less because, you have your VR, you have all these other things. So I think social media I think we've maybe lost it a bit, but I think we can start to find a way. And I think some are starting to do that. And how can we use that as a momentum and as a positive sort of connector versus what, all the things that we're saying that are coming out of it. So,
yeah.
So
yeah,
then
absolutely agree.
Anything you wish that I had asked you today that I didn't, or that you wanted to share that maybe we didn't get a chance to?
Honestly, no, I think I think that we basically went through it all.
I could like write your book.
We went through everything that we can go through, honestly. But yeah, I just think that, what I would just say to people who are listening is, we're all beautiful, unique in our own way. It doesn't matter where we come from, how quote unquote we look, anything like that. We all have unique abilities. We all have talents within us. It's just, let yourself embrace them and see where it takes you. And that doesn't mean that we don't have to work to support ourselves or to support our families, but that doesn't mean that we can't always take out time. And sometimes, when we get home, just reflecting on how you feel and reflecting on how you're feeling about, where things are at, and then taking that next step to really find more common ground, and to learn more, and to do all of those things. Because sometimes we'll come home from work and it's like, well, I guess I'm just going to have dinner and fall asleep and wake up and do this all over again. And sometimes it's just, we just need to take a few moments to, because sometimes it's even when it comes to mental health, it's just about reflecting on how we're feeling. And sometimes
100%.
that just means like sitting down and meditating. That's like one of the biggest things.
Yeah. I agree. I think we get to know ourselves really well when we take a moment out of the day for ourselves. Like exactly like you said, how did I do? What's bugging me? What do I want to put on pause? What do I need to address? All those things I think are a great way to get out of our head. And you actually beat me to it, because I was going to ask you, what's one thing you can leave our listeners with today? So you kind of said it, unless if there's anything you want to add to that.
Well, yeah, I just want to say, just want to reiterate too, Just spend time with your kids. To all the parents out there, to all the family, spend time with your brother, sister, whoever. Build those relationships, because sometimes we're so busy with trying to support and make friends, which is really important. I'm not saying that's not important, but I think also the most important thing is building relationships with the closest ones, which I do think are our families. And sometimes it means having tough conversations, or sometimes it means having all of those things. And it's not, sometimes things don't work out, and that's okay too. But as long as we can try, and as long as we can just be there and be that support, I think that is one of the main things. And it's okay if we have a disability or we don't, but just showing someone that you love them, and that you want to encourage them regardless of whatever disability or differing ability they have, because I think that's what people need the most. And just treating them like you would treat anybody else, because when you start to do that, and when you start to, it was funny, because my brother actually took me with him to his stag last year. And so that was like, I mean, I've hung out with his friends like in family settings before, but like this is just like me and the boys, right?
Yeah.
They were like, man, we didn't know you could do this, or we didn't know you could party with us like this and whatnot. And basically, honestly, it just really comes down to that, is giving people a chance and saying, hey, these are things that may not be socially good, and here's why, and sort of explaining to people. Like sometimes it's just sitting down and having those conversations and really being honest. And that's what I would really say.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. Okay, so what's next for you? Where are we headed? What should we be looking out for here?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're actually releasing, coming up here, it's a very meditative Shabad. It's called Ganjnama, and it's written by Nandlalji, who is a disciple of Guru Gobind Singh Ji. So we're releasing that on July 30th.
Oh, coming up.
Yeah, so I'm really excited to share it with people. It's a very sort of meditative experience, and I'm so glad that we had such a great team to work with on this Shabad. And then obviously Tonal Vision, our next single, is coming out very, very soon, so we'll be announcing that as well.
Awesome.
In the next month it'll be coming out. So really excited about that. And so otherwise I'm going to be doing some solo work on my other stuff as well, and I'm definitely really looking forward to sharing it with all of you. I think the best place to follow me right now is at Jugpreet Bajwa, so Jugpreet Bajwa on Instagram. It's a verified page, so all of you can follow me there on Instagram, and that's where a lot of the content is right now. So
for Tonal Vision, everything, you have your links up there, so it is a good place.
Exactly.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay, well, I just want to thank you so much again for this conversation. You gave me more time than I could have even asked for, so I appreciate that you did this. You were so thoughtful in your answers. I had goosebumps like several times in this conversation. I didn't know you, and I am so glad that you allowed me to get to know you in the last little month. And, I really hope this continues, because I really felt connected in how you chose to connect with me. Like I'm a newbie at this thing too. And you were so supportive of wanting to come on and do this episode with me. So I really, really, really appreciate that.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, it was. And you have to come back now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. I just want to thank all the listeners. As I say, these conversations are door openers. So if there's anything about today's conversation that you have thoughts about, questions about, or maybe even possibly leading into a future episode, you know where to reach us. Give us a shout. Happy to hear what's on your mind. So thank you. Thanks again, Juggy.
Thank you so much for having me, and lots of love to you guys.